Hello, welcome to Reanimated. This is an episode of the podcast about zombies, undead things. With me, your host, Stuart. I'm joined, as always, by the invisible H.A. Conrad. How are you today?
I'm doing swimmingly. How are you?
Terrific, thank you. I always just go straight to weather. It's nice and wet outside. We had our first rain of the, since May. So it's cause for celebration.
I thought we weren't talking about weather anymore.
It's a big deal because I live
Okay.
under the constant, especially this time of year, I live under the threat of wildfire. And so as soon as there's a nice rain, it just turns everything around. Um,
Did you
so
see any of the crazy northern lights? I did not, although apparently everybody else did, but I
um,
didn't see any such thing because of light pollution, so
we were really socked in too. I don't know if it can get through cloud cover. Doubt it.
probably not. Probably
Yeah.
not. So, but anyway, that's going on here. Yeah, all good, but I'm happy for your rain. That's very good news.
Yeah, it's silly to be it feels silly to be so happy about such a small thing, but when it doesn't rain for 5 months, you get a
Yeah,
little bit squirrely about it. And then
done, right?
it happens during your daughter's soccer game and you don't care and you're going to stand out in it and enjoy it. That's what I
Nice.
did.
Did the kids
Um
enjoy it too?
yeah. I mean, she liked playing soccer in the rain. It worked out. Um we have a lot of news today and a Cracker Jack episode of Daryl Dixon, which was 100, not 100. It was 1 hour and 7 minutes long.
Yeah, it was a longer one,
Which
definitely.
does feel lengthy. It's kind of nice that we have, I'm sure we've talked about this before, but like going to the streaming model, so many of these shows that predated that model have kind of gotten to pick and choose how long they want their episodes to be to tell the story that they want to tell. It must make editing harder in a way because you're not shooting for a specific length, I assume, unless they were like, no, this is our 1 hour and 7 minute episode.
I'm sure they have some allotted time, but they needed to have all that time to show all the drama and the Carol walking
Oh
through
yeah.
this, all that fun stuff.
And we
So,
will get to talk about it all in gory detail, but first we have so much news because it's October. Today is apparently also International World Zombie Day, but I don't think anybody's really been celebrating it since COVID. But it used to be a day
so
when a lot of cities would have organized zombie walks, and they just don't really happen as
well,
much.
they still are having them. I just didn't add them in, but there's a lot of zombie walks still
There are,
happening.
but I think they're not related to this
Ah,
holiday in quotes. This was like, I don't, it was apparently in like 7 cities. London, I think, might have been the last one to go off the air, as it were. Their last zombie walk for International Zombie Day was 2019.
yeah, that makes sense.
I think it is still recognized here and there, but that's not the news today. We're going to start off with there's a bunch of trailers to talk about. One of them is from a film that we actually have talked about this film before. I don't know if you remember it, but it was of significance because this is a film from a country where we have not generally talked about zombie stuff. This is Summer Hit is the English title. It's by a Chilean director. No, not director, producer called Florencia Larrea. All female production company, which is one of the cooler parts of the story. The director is Uruguayan. He's Pablo Stoll. And we have talked about years and years ago. We were like, oh, yeah, he's making a movie about the beach. And it's called Summer Hit in English, El Tema del Verano in butchered Spanish. It's set in Uruguay, and it's going to be a zombie movie from that part of the world. Now, we have talked about an Uruguayan zombie film before, which was Virus 32, which was kind of kick-ass, if you recall.
Yeah, it was. I'll admit to you, watching this trailer, I'm not maybe it's just the way that it's edited. Like I'm not as excited to see this. It looks like I don't know. It looks like a very I want to say a zany Zomedy, I guess,
Yeah.
and very slapstick, and it's just not necessarily. I mean, I could be wrong because I also think One Cut of the Dead had somewhat of a similar trailer, although to me that was like a lot more interesting. So I will certainly give it a shot, but this felt like they were showing almost too much. But I don't know what your take on it was. So
Uh, I mean, I'm kind of there with you. I'm just more excited, I guess, about the background.
yeah, yeah,
The trailer itself, I agree, was not incredibly appealing. But the premise is that there are these young women who rob rich people at the beach, who like get invited to their houses and then rob them, and then this happens during a zombie apocalypse. I think that was kind of what they were trying to make a movie
yeah.
about, and they went out and did it.
And I like the backstory and I like that idea, and that idea seems a lot more interesting than the trailer. So we'll see what happens. Maybe this is just their way of trying to drum up interest and definitely, I would say, a younger audience's interest.
Yeah.
But this isn't sort of in my wheelhouse of things that I like like to talk about. Um, but all good, all good. Um,
When is this coming out? Can we tell?
they didn't, I don't think they gave a specific date. I think they said 2025.
Okay.
So
There's a lot of
Um,
2025 in what
actually,
we're talking about today.
actually, there's like quite a few of that, quite a lot of that going on here. Even with this next trailer that we're about to talk about, I was looking for a release date and it just says October, but at least 2024 October, I think. And what we're talking about is Generation Z, and this is the series that they
Don't we
announced.
think it's probably called Generation Z because it's English?
Oh, you're probably right. It's probably, but wouldn't they just say Z? I don't know. So Generation Z, this is the Wheatley undertaking, and this was the weird thing where they had announced this like several years ago. Then again in 2023, it was supposed to be in production and finished. Maybe I think maybe things got delayed, um, possibly due to strikes. I don't know. But that doesn't make total sense because UK. But in any case, an official trailer just came out a few days ago, and it's pretty good. It's brief. The sound is awesome, and I'm really excited to see this. If we can see this, it's going to be premiering on Channel 4 in the UK.
Yeah. There's
I
an
have
absolute lack of information for audiences outside of England, which is kind
Right,
of
I
troubling.
know, I know. But this is one thing I have found. There's like a couple of shows that I really have wanted to see that have only been released in the UK, and it's very hard to get them. I even tried to do like I mean, I have the BritBox subscription through Amazon. I also have done the BBC Select, which is very limited, though has a lot of great stuff, just not the stuff I was hoping to see. So I think that there's ways to see it, but maybe it will be picked up and more widely released in the US at some point. But anyway, we'll keep you posted on that. I'm excited about this. This trailer is pretty good. So brief but very good, and this is exactly to me kind of what you should be doing because
Yeah.
it's
This is a
has a lot of
teaser.
intrigue. It's teaser, so that's
Yeah,
kind of cool.
it's a great little trailer. And it kind of it puts the premise there right in front of you too by the end. So I think we're gonna be in for a treat if and when we can get our hands on it. And I'm trying to figure out if any of the other shows we've watched from the UK have been from Channel 4. Like In the Flesh was BBC, Zomboat, I don't remember what that came out on, but
I
these
thought
basically
that
were on Hulu or something.
Yeah, I thought that was I thought that might Zomboat might have been Channel 4. So, anyway, we'll keep you posted on that. I'm excited for us. And hopefully we'll have good news to about for our US audiences soon. Um, next
And
up,
then
another
yeah, this one's not so
positive,
great.
I
It's
think.
like it's const anytime we hear something about All of Us Are Dead season two, it's disappointing to me. Like the last time I feel like we talked about it, it was, well, they're gonna start production this year. What? I thought they were done. I thought it was gonna come out this year. And now it's that they're not even gonna start filming until 2025.
It is a huge cast, and because of the success of the series, a lot of those actors have been spinning off into other different things. So my guess is it may be a coordination of the timing for all of them. But what also seems pretty clear to me, just there's like, well, this article is teasery to the utmost.
Screen
It's
rant.
terrible, terrible. But talking about how they need to make the sacrifice like worth it to bring this character back, as we all know, because the ending was so dramatic and it hurt him, blah blah blah. That of course that's going to be happening, but it feels like it almost felt like it was making excuses for why it was taking so long, and I don't think that's it. I think it's lining up schedules. I think also they maybe are floundering. Maybe I'm wrong and this is just like conjecture, but it feels like they were floundering a little bit in terms of like what they were going to do with the story. Like, how are they going to have a huge amount of time pass? How are they going to pick this up? And, you know, what's the premise of this? Because so much of the first season, almost all of it was just about these kids trying to be being stuck at this school and trying to get out.
Yeah.
So you have to do more than that. And sometimes like that's the idea, right? And I don't know that things survive much beyond that. And we've seen this with a lot of different series. Like Fear the Walking Dead is my best example of it. It's where first season was pretty solid and then just totally took a turn for horribleness. So, and not, you know, not because of the cast or anything else. It's just it was almost like they didn't know where they wanted to go and really just relied on walkie-talkies too much. So I think we have to see what happens here. Maybe the directors and the writers have more of an idea, and the showrunners have more of an idea of what this is supposed to be. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. And we have a very, I mean, at this rate, I wouldn't be shocked to see that this doesn't come out till like 2026. It feels like that, right?
It
So.
sure could, especially if they're doing 12 episodes at an hour long like they did the first season, which I think they could trim down to 8 or 6. They could have trimmed down the first season too, because there was a lot of, we got to get to the music classroom. Now we got to leave the music classroom and go back to the AV room. Now we got to get to the gym. It was just like, it was a lot. There was a lot of that climbing up and down rope ladders constantly.
Right.
So yeah, it would be fine if they cut it a little shorter. And I am concerned also about the lack of a central concept like the school. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, asked and answered. You've covered it. Also coming out of South Korea, this is actually something I think we've talked about before, but Jisoo from Blackpink is set to star in Newtopia, which is a new zombie or an upcoming zombie show from Korea.
The reason why I dropped this in was I was trying to look around to see if there was any update on when this was supposed to be released, but this is
Yeah.
another sometime in 2020, sorry, 2025. But this kind of was a hopeful thing because maybe this will come out earlier. And I like the idea that there's these series coming out of different countries, especially in like Korea's got just so much talent, especially in the genre.
Mm.
And it makes me excited. I like the premise of this. The idea is that this couple and they're both doing their military service kind of gets stuck in the middle of trying to find their way out of a zombie apocalypse, and it is a series. So I don't know. I am tentatively enthusiastic about this or optimistic about this. So hoping that this comes out soon and maybe this will tide us over on that front. But the point is that there is a lot of content coming out, and for a while I think we were a little bit worried that we weren't going to see a lot. That said, obviously until they actually attach a date to it, that like I'm a little reserved in my expectations because you know, we've seen these kinds of things get pushed and pushed, but it at least sounded like this was in production. So hopefully this will get released pretty soon. And then you saw this little tidbit that just came in.
Oh yeah, I forget even where I saw this to begin with. Maybe it was on Insta or somewhere, but yeah, Stephen Merchant has signed on to join the cast of Daryl Dixon in season 3, which will be the Spanish season. I'm a little bit like unhappy with the fact that we know there's going to be a Spanish season.
Mhm.
I don't want to know that up front.
I
But I guess they
I
felt like they
feel
couldn't hide it maybe, or I don't know.
well, I think because people were so excited about it in Spain that they just couldn't keep a lid on it.
Yeah.
So I think that's
Have
why.
you seen any of the footage? There's all this like interview stuff with the Carol or Melissa McBride and Norman Reedus now where she was apparently like hiding in her hotel room
Yeah,
in
yeah,
France.
yeah.
Which yeah, I mean I guess so she would like because we kind of interpreted it as oh she like decided at the last minute to go be on the show or something. But of course they're not going to write a show that way. They're going to be like she's either in it or she's not.
Right.
So they must have convinced her after their initial negotiations failed. They must have convinced her to come out and be part of the show. And then she was like, or somebody was like, we got to make it a secret so nobody knows that she's on it. So apparently she just stayed in her hotel room. And I guess they couldn't do that with Spain for some reason.
I just think it's because of where they were filming and
Yeah.
it's yeah. So anyway, And look, Norman Reedus is pretty obvious just how he walks around. So I would
Yeah.
imagine
Do you
people
think he
were
walks around or is he's always on a motorcycle? I feel like he kind of just
I
woke
don't
up
know. I think he's just always like out having tapas or something like that. That's my guess.
on a motorcycle.
He seems like a guy who would be really excited to just hang out in different places, and he seemed to be having a lot of fun in Paris. So
Yep.
I just think he's somebody you can't keep under wraps. That's my guess.
So Stephen Merchant though is an interesting choice. Famous Welsh dude from The Office, the British Office. He was like the co-creator, I think.
He was
Um,
also in Hot Fuzz as like a little
yeah,
cameo role. And he generally plays comic figures, but I feel like he's gonna play something less comical. Like he could also play somebody creepy. I think he's
yeah.
done some roles like that before.
Who are other comedians who have done well on Walking Dead?
Comedians?
I
I don't know.
mean, that's what he is. Like, he's not a dramatic actor because he's
He,
6'6" and he plays awkward. Like, that's kind of his
yeah.
calling card. I don't know if
So
he's actually 6'6", but I know he's really
he is
tall.
6'8", I
Six
think.
foot eight. My God.
Like he's really, really tall. And I don't know, did you ever listen to the podcast that he and Ricky Gervais used to do?
No.
It's pretty like it's cringy and awkward and strange and like which you'd probably expect. And so but I could see him doing you know, things that are not as funny. So I think people need to rein in their expectation that he will be doing some kind of a comic relief. The person I could think of, and not quite the same thing, but as like more of a comic actor who sometimes does weird dramatic stuff is Borat. Like he's all over there. What's his
Oh,
name?
yeah, he's definitely. I'm thinking specifically about Walking Dead, but yeah, for sure, Sacha Baron Cohen has done both.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I think that that can sometimes happen, and that's my guess with this. Although I mean,
there's
because this is
definitely. Go ahead,
this is
sorry.
not the kind of show that you're going to be doing, you know. I guess you could have a slight amount of comic relief, but it's not that kind of a zombie series. So
No, yeah, I feel like it
I
would
feel like
be.
he's going to be the big. I feel like he is not going to be comic relief. That is my gut on this. I think he's going to
No.
be kind of an like I don't want to say serial killer or like big. I don't think he's going to be a big bad, but I could see him being like somebody that's a little bit like of a like a I don't know. I think he could be creepy. Let's put it that way.
He's got creepy down.
Yeah, I
I'm
bet he
trying
could.
to think of the name of the actor and the character, honestly, who he played, who showed up in the end of Walking Dead with Magna and her gang of like Connie, Kelly. There was a
Oh,
guy, the guy who played the
yeah,
stra-
yeah.
the violin player. What was his?
Oh, yeah. I remember that. I don't remember his
He's
name though.
been in sitcoms, so I feel like he kind of brought a bit of a lighter energy to add to his role. With the name of the character, completely escapes me, but it was like Peter or something like that.
Well, maybe. I like we'll have to see, but
Yeah, obviously we'll have to. I'm just speculating, but also that was the only example of a comic actor I could think of here on the spot without doing research. Completely unresearched answer.
unresearched moment in the
Yeah,
moment.
yeah. Anyway,
But
so Stephen Merchant, I'm excited to see what he brings to it. I think that'll be cool. I just wish I didn't know which country it was going to be set in a little bit.
well, what can
But
you do? Um, Next up, really exciting. There's a new sci-fi show also coming in 2025
everything.
on an undisclosed date. Is Revival, which is based upon the Image comic series. And I have not actually read this graphic novel. Have you?
No, never seen it before.
I mean, I've seen the premise of it, and it kind of freaked me out a little, which may be why I didn't read it. But I might check it out now. But it does seem kind of interesting, and so I'm looking forward to this one. And so the premise of this is sort of like it's a murder mystery, but also involves the zombie apocalypse, in which you cannot tell the difference between zombies and alive people. So there's
Yeah.
very little that you can tell, in terms of the difference, which is kind of creepy and a little different. And it follows a main character, Dana Cypress, I believe, who is like the sort of main protagonist in this. But I'm looking for this again. We'll keep everybody posted as to when this comes out. But I would very much like to watch this based upon what I know about it at this point. And in the meantime, I might check out the graphic novel because it does look pretty good. and I love Image comic series.
Yeah, this is a premise that we've seen before. There was that French series, The
Yeah.
Returned, I want to say.
Yep.
But there's been American versions or takes on it. We've never really gone into one of these, but so it'll be kind of one of our because it's not technically the genre that I feel
True.
like this doesn't count really as zombie genre, but it's a little it's like are these going to be speaking they're indistinguishable from humans, so they'll be like exactly the
Yeah,
same
but
as they were before
it's
they
a
died.
little darker and they're kind of twisted, so we'll have
Okay.
to see. But
Yeah.
I'm excited for all of this content to be coming out. Hopefully they spread out the joy and it all just doesn't come in October of 2025. So,
Right? It's going to
um,
be a busy, it'll be, I mean, there's so much here for 2025. I feel like we kind of got robbed in 2024.
mm,
Um, and I don't know when this next thing is coming out. I'm sure there's somewhere, it says somewhere, but it's not in the trailer as far as I can.
it said 2025 as well,
Of
I
course it
think.
did.
Yep.
Seven Cemeteries is the name of a film from Danny Trejo, our national treasure.
Hmm.
Um,
He
known
is
for
really.
his tacos and his donuts, I think. At least Matty Bosch is constantly eating his donuts on that show.
Mhm.
And this is a take on the Magnificent Seven with zombies, as you might imagine, and witchcraft. I think
Yeah.
that's everything you need to say about this film. It's a comedy. It's going to be guns and explosions and Danny Trejo and some jokes. It looked like I
Oh,
saw a few recognizable people in the cast.
so there's a conflicting thing. Some people are saying this is going to come out in 2024. So
How could
maybe
that happen?
I don't know. So let's
Oh yeah,
see.
U.S. release date apparently October 11th, 2024 is what I
So
see.
maybe it's already released.
But where would you maybe
Where would
oh,
you watch it?
yeah.
And
Um
but interestingly, the IMDb does not say that. So weird. So
hmm,
we'll have to maybe check this out as part of our ex October extravaganza. We might
indeed.
be able to wait on this too, though. I don't know. We have a lot going on. We still have the Daryl and Carol stuff. So
It's what's funny is if you Google Magnificent Seven Cemeteries,
yeah,
um, you get articles about these seven famous cemeteries in London, which you should probably
I
go
know.
to.
Yeah, well, I've probably been to most of them. I, I, I like a nice cemetery.
I know you do. Anyway, Seven Cemeteries, we'll be on the lookout for it. We'll probably watch it and moan along with it when it comes out, if it's not already out.
It looks like it might be out, but then I'm looking at where it could possibly be playing and I'm getting no information. So
Yeah.
anyway, we shall keep everybody posted on that. Um and then last but not least, uh possibly in line with International Zombie Day, they officially named a street in Parkchester after George Romero. So it's named George Romero Way. And this is the town that he grew up in. So I thought that that was kind of fun. And his family and everybody was there for the dedication.
Wait, wasn't
So,
he from Pennsylvania?
well, he was born and grew up in the Bronx.
Oh, cool. I don't think I knew that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I like the fact that his family got to be there, and it just, he definitely deserves that acknowledgement. So anyway, that was just like a fun little trivia thing. So I think like his kids were there, and that's just kind of um, kind of a fun little thing and a little acknowledgement,
Yeah,
to honor him, which I think was nice.
totally. Good
Uh,
for George Romero and his family, whose other projects remain. I don't know if we have any
yeah,
updates on either of those. Queens of the Dead and Twilight of the Dead, still looking for them every so often. We'll update as we can.
all
That
right.
that takes us to the end of our news and to the beginning of our recap of Daryl Dixon, episode 2, the Moulin Rouge, or just Moulin Rouge, which is kind of a funny title because it's famous in English for being a Ewan McGregor musical and a stage play that was quite popular.
Yep.
Was it Ewan McGregor? It was, right? That was his.
And Nicole Kidman.
That's when I realized that I don't love his singing voice.
Yeah,
What a jerk.
I don't know. I thought Life Left Ordinary was pretty good.
Um,
He was all right in there.
yeah.
All right. So episode two. Um, lots going on here. I
Yeah,
like
there's a lot. It's an hour and 7 minutes, and they fit a lot in. We've got our A plot and our B plot. I'm not sure which one's which in this one because they're both pretty critical. One is with Carol and Ash, the other is with Daryl and the Nest. Yeah, I don't think either one of these takes the second fiddle because they give a lot of screen time to both. Probably
oh,
a little more to Carol in the end.
which is also why it was probably a little longer episode. You had to fit it all in.
Yeah.
So we did the plane sort of journey. We Carol and Ash make it to Greenland.
First,
Um,
we have a few scenes in the at the Nest at Mont Saint
oh,
Michel.
I wanted
Um,
the Carol and Ash thing, but
Well,
okay, go.
yeah, these are just important because they set up some of the action that happens later. You have this scene with a voiceover from Laurent. He's praying. He's talking about he wants his friends to be happy and do well.
Mhm.
He knows how important he is to the people at the nest. He wants to live up to their expectations, and he also wants to learn how to throw a knife. Is kind of how the prayer ends. But in the
Mhm.
middle of it, you're seeing these shots of smiling women looking at him. They're out like digging for clams in the on the beaches by Mont Saint Michel, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool shot. I love that they have this location. I think every time I see it, I'm like, damn, they must have been thanking their lucky stars every time they got to set up a shot of that, right? Don't you think?
Yeah.
It's just beautiful. Like it's hard to beat. Um, and there's also the shot of this woman bringing him a galette and a glass of milk and giving him a kind smile during this voiceover where he's talking about
Yeah.
all the stuff he's got going on.
And this is definitely just showing how he is treated differently. He's treated with reverence. People are spoiling him rotten. He holds a very specific place in the community. I don't get the sense that everybody's getting galettes, right? It's-
Like, yeah, custom galettes.
yeah,
And by the end of his prayer, you don't realize that he's saying all this. I guess you do know he's saying it out loud, but what you don't realize is that Lo Sang is like sitting 10 feet behind him and listening, and then like clearly eavesdropping on this prayer, and then saying, maybe throwing knives isn't what you should be thinking about, and you should be, you're for a greater purpose, yada yada. He's giving him the lecture that we kind of have already heard.
yeah,
And Lauren was looking at the door, and Lo Sang's like, "Do you have somewhere to be?" He's like, "Yeah, Daryl's going to teach me something. It's a surprise." And then he runs off and gives Daryl a hug outside the window. And Lo Sang and Jacinta is this other woman who we've seen with Lo Sang so far in the first episode, who's kind of one of his counselors. And they speak in French, which there's not a lot, but there's several nice French dialogue scenes in this episode, which I was grateful for. That was one of my beefs about last season was there wasn't enough French being spoken in France, and they talk about how she's talking to Lo Sang about how Laurent's gonna leave. Like he loves Daryl. Daryl's gonna leave, and Laurent's gonna go with him, and this whole thing is gonna fall apart. So there's a lot of that sort of discussion. We still don't know exactly what they're planning, though.
yeah. And here's the thing about Losane, and I know this is like my little gripe about the storytelling piece. Everything that he's purporting to be, I guess I could see a little bit of this. We'll talk more about this at the end of the episode when certain things become clear. I just find it hard to, maybe he is a zealot, I don't know, but he seems very reasonable. And he also, like, if he's the one in power, truly in power, some of it, him being influenced by this woman who's like essentially his right hand person, it just feels a little weird to me that he wouldn't be the one sort of setting the tone and setting the things that are happening. He seems reluctant basically in just some of the things, this big mystery test that they're talking about with Laurent.
For sure.
Um,
And that's more and more clear toward the end. At this point,
yeah,
you know
but
that
at this
she's more
point,
hardcore or hardline than he is. Like he's trying to say, let's delay, they're not ready, and she's saying we got to go for it.
yeah,
Yeah,
but I mean, I don't, and I again, maybe this is what makes it a little bit more complex and we don't know what will happen. Obviously, we will find out a little bit more, I would imagine, tonight. But with the next episode, but I just his interactions with Laurent are kind of interesting in that, and this is sort of what to our point last time, which is he seems to think that Laurent doesn't need to have self-defense. So obviously he's a little bit, you can tell he's annoyed by what he's hearing Laurent say about Daryl. He's concerned about his relationship with Daryl. And they do a lot here in terms of showing that without saying it, which I thought was pretty good. And based upon the dialogue he had with D Daryl earlier. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. And I also think that Laurent is uncomfortable in like I think he's fine and he likes his galettes, but he does seem uncomfortable with some of this attention, and so I think that's pretty clear. He really just seems to want to just have these, and I think that's in part why he is so close to Daryl is because Daryl doesn't treat him like that. Daryl treats him like a kid.
Yeah.
And everybody else is treating him like a messiah. And so I think that it makes him feel a lot more normal to hang out with Daryl and his auntie.
Yeah.
So,
Well, Daryl, if you know, they had that whole journey together last season, and Daryl was a real jerk to Laurent,
mhm.
at least once, and maybe more than that. So I think that that'll also base ground their relationship, in just like, yeah, real talk. I've also forgotten to mention that like part of what happened during this introductory scene is that Daryl and crew came back from the rescue mission, bringing
And Emil
Emil
is
and
in a
Falou
bad
back.
way. Emil is in definitely a bad way.
Emil's like catatonic. Yeah, it's he's not looking that great. Sylvie's really happy to see him, but he seems
Yeah.
out of it for sure. And Falou is just like kind of banged up, but basically fine,
Yep.
as it turns out. Um, so then we cut though after these scenes in the nest to the aircraft kind of having some trouble over Greenland, but they are able to land without much problem. They get out of the plane showing the flare gun ominously twice. I thought that was a
I
little
know. I
heavy-handed.
know. Do you really need to do it? Honestly, you don't even need to show it at all. We can
Yeah,
just be surprised by it. Was that to me that
have
was just
that
really
felt just like somebody really needed us to know that there was a flare gun there. Like just
yeah,
keep it in the door, like have it sticking out, like let the camera linger on it for half a second. But you don't need to have it clatter to the ground and then show it again when Ash gets out of the aircraft. That felt like too much. Um,
agree.
and they're so at first Carol's like, "Are you coming?" He's like, "Yeah." And then he's like, "Oh, this is great, Greenland, we made it or whatever." And then they see some zombies, and she's like, "Don't count your blessings," or I forget exactly the dialogue. I shouldn't write dialogue. And she's like getting ready to shoot them, and then Ash is just like, "Oh, I'll fix the plane." So I don't know where they were planning to go. Maybe they were just going to have a look around to see if they were safe, which they turned out to be not
Not.
safe. In this scene, you know that something's not going to go right here because they spend too much time on her lining up shots and shooting three zombies, right? So you
Yep.
kind of you
Yep.
kind of knew something was going to happen, but
Yeah.
you might not have known that it was Vitruvian Man. Oh, not Vitruvian Man. That's the paint. That's the drawing by Leonardo da Vinci. It's the Bogmen.
Yes.
It's the and I don't know that this didn't feel like the right climate for Bogmen. I mean, we know if you watch the after show that this is all being shot in the French Alps, not in Greenland.
It's,
It does look kind of what I would imagine Greenland looks
yeah.
like those beautiful big hills
I
and
I think it was just yeah, this did not seem like the right situation for Bogman,
right.
but
It's not wet enough.
no.
Bogmen need to be in peat, which is like swampy, I think.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's kind of obvious that that's what it is, but
yeah, but you could
maybe
also get that sort of mummification really at really high altitudes. That like you've got Incan mummies up in the Andes. There's a famous one up in like the Alps in Austria on the side of a mountain. That's how they figured out that he was he was so well preserved. They were like, oh, he's lactose intolerant. He had this and that, and he's thousands and thousands of years old.
Oh, and they find a ton of them in Ireland and things like that, where it's just
There,
like
I assume
they'll
it's in
find
the peat. Yeah,
it is, and then they'll also find weird stuff in there, not just like people, but like creepily. I think they found like some butter or cheese or something in there that was like preserved,
Jesus. Oh
and
my God.
it's like, okay, I'm a little disturbed by the fact that that is preserved, but it was used basically as you know, like a hiding place, or they did a lot of stuff with the bogs, not just preserving humans, but treasures too, supposedly. So it's a pretty, but it's to me, it's like a pretty obvious thing that it's like not like you can see it's a bog, you know? This
Yeah.
didn't look like a bog. I don't know what this was.
Yeah, I don't know. But they really wanted to have these preserved mummies in Greenland for whatever reason, and they end up there's three of them. Everything for the scene is fine except for how fast these bog zombies move. Like they get up and grab Carol so fast. One of them grabs her knife arm as she's stabbing another zombie.
Yeah, and it like what we've seen in the past, just in terms of like the dormant zombies, is that it takes them a minute to kind of get warmed up,
Yeah,
especially if they've been just kind of, in I don't want to say hibernation, but that's kind of what it's like.
yeah.
So I thought that was a little weird. But
It's
anyway.
it's not the end of the world. It's a good fight. I mean, it's like pretty touch and go for her and Ash because Ash gets attacked after he saves her, and then he gets saved by a very unlikely sniper shot
Yep.
from across the valley where we meet sort of Hannah and Yoon. Although Hannah calls Yoon Ian constantly, and that was really confusing for me the first time I watched this
Yeah,
episode.
me too. I was like, what?
I mean, maybe it's just like people can't say my name who speak Spanish necessarily. They call me S. Stuart. Um, and so maybe she just says a Ewan or no, that's not what she's saying. She's saying Ian.
Ian.
I'm pretty sure she's calling Yoon Ian. Her name is spelled Eun, and I think that's pronounced Yoon, but
Yeah,
maybe
me
it's Eun. I don't know.
too.
Anyway, so Hannah and Yoon are very nice. It's a laugh out loud moment when Yoon waves to them and says, "Welcome to Greenland." I thought that
Hmm.
was very funny after that little intro.
Yep.
And Ash is like, "Oh, people, awesome." And Carol's hard to read in this episode. She's always hard to read because she lies very effortlessly.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the Hannah Yoon stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
so I think that the one piece that just sort of was bothering me about this is that I don't think that Carol would ever allow herself to be separated from Ash.
she voluntarily does this.
And she
Yeah.
voluntarily does it, which it's like you don't know enough about these people. And there's one thing that Carol knows, it's that you don't take anybody at face value until you figure out what their motivations are. And that's what she generally does. The only thing I can think is that sometimes she does things or makes decisions that I think she knows that Ash won't approve of because he's quite innocent, given that he survived this long, but he's much more innocent than other people she's run into. So maybe
Yeah.
there is a protective piece to this, but she
But
also
then
doesn't
she's not in a position to protect him because she chooses to
know.
stay back with Hannah. They haven't said or done anything yet to make her feel like they should be untrustworthy.
No, but
Um, they've offered up their supply room. Ash found the speed tape. He's going to fix the plane. Him and Yoon go back, and Hannah offers to stay and make some food to bring to them to take with them when they leave, which is an extremely generous thing to do. Carol then is like, "Do you want some company?" And she voluntarily stays behind, which is funny because it plays right into Yoon and Hannah's plan, but they had not said, "Hey, Carol, can you help me?" Like their plan, how would their plan have worked if Carol had left with Yoon and Ash?
right. Yeah. I mean, the one piece that sort of, no, it still doesn't make sense. Like, um, she's just very skeptical and like, I just like, there's this whole thing with her taking the drink, which maybe that's her way of acting like she feels like they can be trusted. I feel like she's still skeptical though, even when she does that. Like, that's her way of making making Hannah think she trusted or something. The weapon access in this makes
It's
like so like I just don't believe it. I do not
it's
believe
so
Daryl.
weird for Carol to sit there and let this happen to her. It
Yeah,
feels like she's just gone passive, and that doesn't feel like So maybe it's bad writing for Carol in this episode. It doesn't
yeah,
feel like she
that
would,
is the part
yeah.
that I'm like, what? No way, right? Like it felt really dumb and definitely not Carol like.
Yeah,
Um,
she has never been one to let herself become a victim. And she
No.
basically does in this scene. She's like, well, I wish you wouldn't do that. She's kind of just being like, please don't point that at anybody, or are you sure you want to do that? As long as you're careful. But then
Right.
every, it's just this like slow murder attempt that's just happening in front of her. And then by the time the crossbow is pointed at her, she's just like, well, I'll pick up this pen. Like, what's she gonna do with the pen?
Yeah, and again, this is like the nicest person in the world somehow like hoodwinking her. It just feels like dumb. And then she's got to talk her way out of it.
Which she absolutely does, and it's crazy that what was she able to read Hannah, her body language, that she didn't really want to kill her?
Well, I mean, Hannah basically said she didn't,
Oh,
so
I
maybe
know, but
not
it took
even
a
like it's that much of a mystery, but still.
yeah, it wasn't, and it didn't take too long for Carol to get that out of her. But I wouldn't say that they've known these people long enough to be able to read their their intent yet. Because Hannah could certainly have just shot her as soon as the crossbow was pointing at her.
Yeah.
But instead, it must have been like an hour they were sitting there because that stuff seems to happen pretty quickly after Yoon and Ash leave. Yoon is able to walk all the way back to the shelter before um, she's like, "What the hell? Why haven't you done this yet?" And
Yep.
Hannah's like, "Can I just have a minute, please?"
Right. I mean, honestly, some of the funnier interactions are between Ash and June
Well,
because
yeah,
he's just like, "What?"
the old "we need you to re help us repopulate the Earth's" plot line, which is pretty
I mean,
tropey.
to me, the biggest, like, big red flag about all of this is that these two have been there and alone since the whole thing began.
Yeah,
And they have a plane, and it seemed that was where I thought this was going to go, is that they were going to try to get the plane, steal the plane from Carol and Ash, or kill Carol and Ash to fly out of there. And then they
that's
say a few things that like seem, oh, maybe they are okay with staying, but one isn't. I don't know. In any case, that's where I thought this was going. And it kind of went there because obviously Hannah didn't want to stay, and disagreed a bit with what Yoon was doing. But they're so isolated and they don't know what's been really happening everywhere else, or they don't have that particular. I mean, look, there's the Bogman and things like that. So obviously they've been dealing with it, but since they're alone, it doesn't seem like they've been dealing with the things Carol and maybe to some extent Ash have been dealing with.
it is weird that they've just been out there for 15 years or however long it's supposed
Right.
to have been now.
Without any kind of
And
like,
they have no idea what's going on in the rest of the world. Apparently, there were other humans in Greenland, but they're all Tupelak now, which is what they call them. And they've just kind of like boiled these two characters down into each of them have their own central concept of what they think is going on. What's weird is they make Hannah the one who's like, we deserve this as a race. We're terrible. We deserve to
right,
be
right,
extinct.
right, right.
She's the one who's like, I don't want to kill you, Carol. Which so I think
Yeah.
that's kind of an interesting juxtaposition. But Yoon is like, I've planned out a society here with the children of Ash for the next
Right.
1,000 years, she says. We've got it all planned out for 1,000 years. I'm pretty sure they don't have the genetic material to do a
I
thousand
was
year
about
community.
to, I was about to say, we're going to be getting into some genetic issues with inbreeding here. Like this is not
Within
going to
one
work.
generation, you're gonna have some
This is
problems.
not going to work out so well, right?
Yeah. But so that's their plan. But I thought it was kind of interesting that Hannah's like, yeah, this is the best thing that could have happened, and Carol's like, you don't like all of everybody we've ever known is dead, all of our loved ones, and Hannah just doesn't seem to have a concept of that. But she's also the one most eager to get back to society or back to the world. So interesting writing for her, and yeah, Yoon is something else. They so this kind of unfolds in a tragic way. It's also really interesting the way that this unfolds.
Yeah.
So Hannah kills Yoon, who's about to shoot Carol, and she's saying things like, what I goddamn tell you to do." There's like there's obviously a 15-year, you're the only other person I ever get to talk to, weird relationship between these two
Yep.
women. But so Hannah kills Yoon, and then she's like, "Can I still come with you on the plane?" And Carol's like, "Of course, no
Well,
problem."
there's also like a space issue. I just don't think there's any way they could fit
Yeah, they would be real
there.
tight. But then their plan is to bring back Sophia slash Daryl on this plane. So
Well,
they know they
Ash
have to have room for a
Ash
third
doesn't
person.
know about Daryl.
No, but he
So
knows that there's a human person who's supposed to come back with them.
true, true, true.
So
But
they
still,
need to have some room.
let's
If they,
just say
yeah,
Hannah is a tall drink of water.
yeah,
She's a person.
she's a
So
big Dane, tall Danish lady.
yep,
She, so she's like, then they're walking through Tupelak Alley, uh, and they're like, it's really foggy. Um, I think there's pretty decent odds that Ash would have gotten eaten here because he's chained to the airplane too.
yeah,
That
agree.
could have been an
That
unfortunate.
didn't seem like the best plan that you had to like get some kind of genetic material out of him because
Yeah.
it seemed like yeah
Why
that
did she leave him out there?
I think I don't know. I
Yeah,
mean
that's
maybe
weird choice. But so they're just quietly, these two about the same height. I mean, Hannah's a little taller than Melissa McBride, kind of both short hair, both holding weapons, walking and talking quietly as they approach the aircraft, where you can kind of almost make out that Ash is there.
yep.
Hannah's talking about all the French she studied in grade school and how she's going to be useful, and she can't wait to go to France.
Uh,
When there's an amazing effects shot here.
yep.
Dude, I freaking love this, especially when the flare finally burns out in her throat.
Yep.
There's that like that slow subsiding of the glow in her throat, and obviously Hannah, the woman playing Hannah, is doing a great job of acting like she's just been shot in the throat. I love this whole shot. I mean, it's gross, it's terrible, it's tragic too because Hannah's quote unquote a good guy.
Yeah,
Um,
well, the thing is though is that Ash doesn't know that. He only knows what Yoon told him
he knows
and
that two similarly height, similar haircut, armed women are walking toward him in the fog.
yeah.
How the hell did he make that shot?
I don't know, especially since I mean, look, he's got some skills, so maybe there's that. But
Sure.
maybe he heard Carol's voice and I don't know, she
Maybe. Yeah, Hannah has a distinctive voice.
um
Yeah, it could have been. I just feel like that was a real gamble. He could have
I
definitely shot Carol in the throat instead.
I agree, but in any case, it also shows that where his loyalties are, and I don't think we doubted that, but he is always acting in Carol's interests, and obviously she is doing her normal weird Carol thing where she's like re withholding information, and she knew Hannah had turned, but then again, how do you ever trust somebody who's held, I mean, and this is to Carol's point, like, I don't, she's not going to trust somebody who's held a weapon on her like that, right?
Maybe, maybe not.
I don't know. It's
She, yeah, the like just the way that she basically just goes to Ash. Ash is upset that he shot her, Hannah. And he's like, she was gonna kill you, and Carol goes, yeah, she was. And he's like, I had to do it, and she's like, yeah, you did. But she
yep.
also there's like two other answers to that she isn't saying, which you said that she's like not sharing all the information. She is saying things that could be true, you
Well,
know?
he doesn't know that though, so
Right.
that's the part. And then there she gets even more and more awkward as they talk about Sophia, which is, you know, it's gonna be really bad when the truth comes out here. I am totally envisioning a thing where Daryl is just like, "What? Why have you gone off the deep end, Carol? Like Sophia's been dead." You know what I mean? Like you could
Haha.
totally see that happening where
Well,
he's
we'll
like, "What
see.
are you doing?" But
Carol
and there's
also says in this airplane after they've taken off, she's like, that was your first person you've ever killed, and he's like, yeah. She's like, I remember every single person I've ever killed.
mm,
It never gets easier or something along those lines. And I did some math on the Walking Dead wiki, and I came up with 72 is the number of humans that she's killed.
that seems low to me because I mean she did a lot of the blowing up of the
Yeah,
different
Terminus, they only actually credit her with two kills because some of them are caused because
yeah.
and she killed though 16 whisperers, 20 saviors. Like she's killed a lot of people. And
Mm,
then there's others who we know their names like Karen and Lizzie
yep.
and others. But so it's kind of absurd for her to say that she remembers every person she's killed. That was kind of what I was getting at there.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot of people. And then he's like, go to sleep. It's gonna be a long day.
Yep.
And here's where my aircraft fidelity dreams fly out the window. I mean,
Mm,
we as an audience go back to France and we're with Daryl in this whole situation that's unfolding in the nest. But when would you like to hear my aircraft aviation rant, HA,
I think
now or at the
you should
end?
do it now. You should do it now.
Well, here we go. So this aircraft that they're flying in is a Beechcraft. It's a Model 35. This is an aircraft that has been around since the 40s, but and they stopped making it in like the 80s. So it could be 30 years old in this episode, or it could be much older. That doesn't mean that an airplane is not good. I used to fly in a really, really old aircraft that was made in the 60s, and I flew it into the 2000s. Um, this plane though does not is not big, as we talked about last time. It doesn't have huge fuel tanks. Like the factory default for one of these kind of aircraft, and this is approximate because I don't know the exact model and there was some variation. It's about 750-mile range. To get this route that they say they're flying, it far exceeds 750 miles on any leg that they do, which is apparently in two legs. Um, but he does, like part of that first episode was him adding another fuel line so they wouldn't have to refuel. Like they've kind of tried to address this, that they've modified the aircraft. And
Yep.
so I'm willing to put aside my disbelief and say, okay, so he managed to like double the fuel. Let's say he doubled the range on this aircraft. And there is in some scenes you can see like a tank in the back seat. They have removed at least one passenger seat for another tank of gas, I'm pretty sure. So let's say they've got double the fuel, and maybe more, because there is also a historical precedent that a Model 35 Beechcraft aircraft was modified to be able to fly 5,000 miles. And there was a guy, William Odom, in an aircraft called the Waikiki Beach, who flew from Hawaii to New Jersey in one go, which is 4,900 miles. This aircraft, though, has like fuel pods on the wings and only had room for one person because everything else was gas, basically. But this plane has that capacity. So I think when they talk about the producers talked about, you know, talking to aviation experts, this must have been part of their calculus was like, well, it's been done before. So, but what they do is they fly from Maine to Greenland. We don't know where in Greenland, so, but it's about 1,400 miles, 1,400 plus, which is almost, yeah, that's like twice the range of a Beechcraft Model 35. It's 750 times 2 is 1,500. So they could in theory get to Greenland on one tank of gas, but then they'd be out of gas. And that's not the thing that they're talking about needing. They just need tape. So clearly they must have like tripled the gas capacity for this aircraft, which is getting a little bit wild without fuel in the wings or on those pods. But then the next leg that they do is straight to Paris from Greenland, which is like 2,000 miles. And that is where I say, no, sir.
Well, I think they had to crush things into an hour and 7 minutes, and maybe they did make other stops and they just didn't show them. I
Wouldn't
like,
no, because she goes to sleep and then she wakes up and they're in France. I feel like if they were gonna nod to that, they could have said something in the dialogue and not.
we know that that's not what they're gonna do. Anyway,
I no,
well,
but they could have. Like they could have made this a road trip. They could have made this a cool ass road trip. If they'd
well,
introduced
I mean,
Carol
but the
earlier in last season than the last episode, they could have had her flying to France this whole time and it would have been super cool.
well, I will say that they did talk about the flight trip and they did specifically mention Scotland and other things. So I feel like they
No, they
cut
only
s-
said
out.
Greenland. They didn't say I said Scotland last week, but they said Greenland.
Oh, I thought they had said Scotland. Anyway, but
No.
I guess, we'll have to let this particular nit go
Oh
because
no, I never will, HA. You
you're
know
not
me.
going to, you're not going to. I get it. I get it.
I just think there's a lot left. There's a lot of story left on the table here, which they cut out because it was less convenient than to be like, and then she's in France. And the producers even like, we didn't want it to seem too easy. So they were like, well, make him stop one time on the way there. And that I think that was a cop out. However, the story they want to tell is Carol finding Daryl in the country of France, which, as absurd as it
Well,
sounds, is kind of what she tries to undertake.
they want to do more than that, but they specifically want her to interact with some of the other people he's interacted with and have a different, a different like she's coming at it totally blind, which is kind of good. But in the meantime, we should also talk about what is going on at the nest. And they have the heartwarming scene with Daryl and Laurent and Isabel with the baseball scene. And they talk a lot about this in the after show. Did you watch this?
Yeah, it was apparently fun to shoot, but
Yeah.
also Daryl Norman Reedus kind of throws some shade. He's like, "Yeah, you think this worked in one shot in one take? Hell
Yeah.
no."
No, he talks actually a lot about some of the difficulties in shooting, which are pretty humorous. He talks about like three separate things. One is about the baseball scene because, uh, the kid who plays Laurent has not ever played baseball, but he turns out to be okay at it, but it's just like a lot. And they are creating this idea of a little family unit, and that's even how Laurent is interacting with both of them, and he's very happy that they're interacting. That
There've been
Isabel's
a few different shots of Laurent hugging Daryl in this
yeah,
episode.
yeah. So there's that. And then we also have a little that just sets up this like level of like family unit coziness kind of thing. But the thing that I think is really important here, and this is we'll talk about how this unfolds, but there's this whole thing to set it up, and then of course, in the next instance, Laurent is kidnapped. And kidnapped in a really like weird way. Like Isabel goes to wake him up, and there's like a basically a like an obvious like hook with the carabiner or whatever, like a rope over the windowsill. It looks like the room's been disturbed and whatever, and immediately she's like, "Oh my gosh, somebody's kidnapped him!" And
Well, so
um,
Daryl kind of eats that hook, line, and sinker too. He's like, "There's sand here. Somebody came and took him."
Yeah. And Losane is like, oh, it's got to be Jeanette or whatever. Somebody led them to the nest. But wouldn't you see if that is indeed what they did, wouldn't there be something a little bit more? Somebody would have seen something. They have this thing about the sentry being knocked out or something like that. But there's this whole thing where it's like, of course, Isabel is going to go and Falou's going to go, and there's all these like little side eyes. So you know something's up with this. You knew it was. I mean, I think any normal viewer would get the fact that it was Lassane and his team that created this particular scenario,
Well,
and
it's yeah, but it's not as simple as even that. Like it's even more complicated.
it is.
Sang certainly knows that it's not the what's happened is not what they think has happened. He's trying to dissuade Isabel from going quite strenuously. Emile is
Yeah,
trying to dissuade Falou from going. And this whole relationship between Emile and Falou, I think, is kind of broken in the script here too. Sylvie's been trying to work with Emile. She gave him a haircut. She was like trying to find his wounds, but she doesn't have any, and he was like very weepy. But now he's got this short hair and his leather jacket, and he seems hard again. So Emile's weird. Obviously, there's stuff going on with him. And then we've got Jacinta giving some shotgun shells to one of the leather coated
yeah, yeah. We know
nest militia, and he gives those to Daryl. And so we're like, oh, okay, so the audience is clued in based on the couple of interactions we had. Emile trying to dissuade Falou, Losang trying to dissuade Isabel, Daryl being given empty shells. Yeah. And
I guess
also they would
so.
weigh, I don't know.
Well, no, I was going to say Daryl would under like if those were empty, Daryl would get it,
They
and
might
so
they might have just taken out the gunpowder but left the shot in. So
maybe
that's what I just when I was about to say they would weigh differently, but I think there's a way to make it so that they wouldn't ignite, but they would feel heavy enough.
yeah. I also think so. The thing here is, and well, I guess we can give some big spoilers, but like, I mean, we know that this ruse is a ruse, and that I don't like the way Losane is trying to get Isabel not to go, and he must know something's going to happen. Does he think that they're going to just kill Daryl? Um,
Maybe it's yeah, I don't know what he thinks is going to happen out there,
because he seems surprised when it turns out that that's exactly what they were supposed to be doing.
but he's expecting Daryl to come back because when he
Right.
has that conversation with Jacinta later. So does that mean he's like, well, Daryl's going to be waylaid by my men. Daryl
Right.
will probably try to kill them. I mean,
All right.
what does he think Daryl's going to do?
Well, and also, like, what do you think is going to happen when he comes back that you didn't want Isabel to go? Like, were you going to try to, maybe it's that he was going to try to win her over to his way of thinking. I don't know. But anyway, that was just kind of strange to me. Like, if he didn't know what the actual plan was, if this was just a distraction for Daryl, his strenuous, like, objection to Isabel going seemed weird.
Yeah, it
Unless he
definitely
wanted
should. it should be making Isabel feel like something's wrong.
Yeah. And I think she would, because she and Daryl are both not stupid. And I also feel like Daryl would have noticed this, and Daryl probably also would have noticed Emil trying to get Falou not to go. There's too many weird little side conversations that going on here,
Yeah.
and maybe the excuse is that he's just really focusing on getting Laurent. But I feel like somebody's alarm bell, alarm bells would have been going off, whether it was Isabel or Daryl. And obviously, like Isabel, of course, is going to go after Laurent. Like there is no question about that. Like the idea that she would stay back is just ludicrous.
Yeah. I
And,
kind of wish
and
Sylvie had gone, but also we needed Sylvie to stay at the
right.
nest to do some
Um,
sleuthing.
yeah,
But it
and
would have
so
been nice to have her there. I bet she could have talked to Emil down.
right. And of course what is happening is they are there and it becomes very clear that this is not real. And it brings back definitely there's definitely some callbacks because it's like this big factory thing and a mill and it feels like you're back in the United States because like when they were going and kind of taking over that industrial complex and whatever and it's
A
like
sanctuary, you mean?
yeah a
Or
little bit and like Daryl to me there's like he kind of looks up at it and you're like oh God he's like not again a little bit and because there's a lot of places to hide, and then it becomes very clear that unfortunately it's not Jeanette and her baddies they have to worry about. It's insiders, and they all notice that these are people that have been from the nest. It's and they do manage like to they manage to survive, but unfortunately Emil has to be taken out by Falou, and Falou seems like but Falou almost dies in the meantime. Like they all
I
have
think
very
Isabel's actually the one who shoots Emil.
yeah,
Um,
but just really, it's terrible. Anyway,
it's weird. Like, so the Nest guys all have guns, but then they decide, no, let's stab Daryl and
yeah,
attack him with their knives in a way that he is aware that they're coming somehow. Because maybe, I don't know, did they draw their knives very loudly? But they double cross him as they're all moving up these stairs. A big fight breaks out. He throws one of them through a window really fast, which was great.
yep,
Um, and Falou, it's kind of incredible that he survives. It's
yeah,
Falou against two guys. Daryl at least has Isabel backing him up in the end because, well, I guess he's going up against four people by the end. Isabel is a cold-blooded killer. She's shooting people left and right in this sequence, and Falou holds his own and kills two of the double crossers here too, with Emil kind of like standing by and not helping. And then Emil tries to hold all three of them at gunpoint, which I feel like is never gonna
nope,
succeed, because he does try to shoot Daryl, I think, eventually, and Falou jumps in, fracas ensues, Emil is undone. I was wondering why they weren't keeping any of the other Nest people alive. Like the last one that Daryl kills up on the roof, he like jumps and stabs in the chest.
yep.
Like, why didn't you want to talk to him and be like, why are you trying to kill me? I thought we were all buddies. But Emil has all the info, and so he spills the beans. I think we're supposed to now take it that because he was traumatized by his time with Genet and the torturers, he has now become uh, zealotized, fanaticized for this Nest faction. How he
It
had, I don't know
happened.
how he had time to like get all that because he's been there for like less than a day.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like it seems, I mean, he makes some comment that he made a promise if he got away something. I don't know what that means, but maybe there's something to that. But
It's
they
yeah,
didn't.
the way he makes that sound, it's like he owes the pouvoirs and Genet something, but actually he's doing all this for the other side, for the Union. I forget what their
Well,
actual
I
name
thought it
is.
was going to be something like I'm going to become a priest and I can't be with you, Sylvie. That's what I thought it was.
That would be ironic, wouldn't it? She gave up her vows for
Right.
him.
Well, that's kind of where I thought they were going with it, but
Actually,
no.
have they
No,
has
I
she?
don't think so.
Losang still calls her sister Sylvie, so
Yeah,
maybe
so
not
I don't think people are aware, but I think I don't know that they had actually, you know,
relations.
come to an understanding at that point.
So, but while the action is going on at the mill, Sylvie has witnessed a galette and a glass of milk being taken on a tray and followed that
The
tray.
the Galette gives away all
Yeah.
that. that nasty little like symbol. No, I'm kidding. Nicolettes are delicious. Um, but obviously nobody else is getting galettes. This is just, I mean, can we talk about how that would probably be something that they should not be doing while they're trying to be very super sneaky is something so obvious, but whatever. She goes and discovers that Laurent is being hidden away in part of the medieval town in Saint Michel, and um, and we see Lausanne sort of discover her, and we don't yet know what happens, but obviously, I think he's going to try to bring her over to their side of things. Hopefully, they don't kill her. And then we have the whole conversation at this point, or pretty soon thereafter, where Lausanne discovers that Daryl and Isabel and Falou could be dead, and he gets very upset. Which again seemed weird given how strenuously he was trying to get Isabel to stay. Um, and we see the difference in opinion and zealotry and other things going on here. And I guess I just want to know what Lausanne thought was going to happen. It seems a little rich that he wouldn't think that something bad was going to happen to Daryl.
He
And
seems so mad at first, but then after just a couple of more sentences from Jacinta, who's like, it was your prophecy that kept us going, and we need to test, we need to prove. And then he's like, oh, yeah, I guess you're right. It feels like he comes
yeah,
around to her
a
murderous
little
point of
too
view very
quickly.
fast.
A little, he first is like, "Oh, what have we become?" And then he's like, "Oh, maybe." So, that's going to be an interesting comeuppance once they in confrontation once they
Yeah.
actually get back.
So
Uh,
also did you say that they plan to have Laurent get bitten? Have we said that out loud?
I don't think we've said that out loud. I thought that was coming because I thought that was revealed. Was that revealed in
That's
this
what
conversation?
Emil says to them before he gets shot. He's like,
Uh,
he's not gonna turn from the bite, and everything's gonna be
yeah,
great, and we're all gonna live
right.
forever.
And
And
then Isabel
this
being
will be the
like,
proof that we can live post zombies because of one person who has potentially a bite
yeah,
immunity.
but let's talk about that because uh, what would they do? Like
They'd get
in
a bunch of pregnant women bitten right before they give birth,
right? That
maybe.
like what they would do? Because that seems fucked up too.
That seems kind of murdery. Yeah. Uh,
Um, I don't know how this one guy survived. Like anyway,
we
and
haven't seen the prophecy. We don't know what it's supposed to say, but either way, I think we can all agree that Laurent would just turn because maybe not, but it kind of feels that way. He's just a precocious kid. That seems
yeah,
like a real roll of the dice. To
yeah.
be like, yeah, we're just gonna do it. It's gonna work. Losang believes that kind of without any doubt. It's gonna work, no problem. And so then we'll move on with our society and into the future.
Well, I don't know. This seems very risky because if he's wrong, everything that they've built falls apart. So I think it
Yeah.
would be in his best interest to keep the mystery about this
Well,
continuing.
he probably should
Uh,
have come up with a prophecy that had less of a huge Achilles heel.
right, right.
Like
Uh,
either it
but
works and if it works, it works. But if it doesn't, well, this has been a real waste of time.
yeah. So anyway, we've got that, and then Daryl and Isabel are basically waiting for the tide to come back or the tide to go down because they can't, it's all like it's high tide when they come back and they can't get back to Saint Michel. And
And
so
Falou is
in,
with them at
yep.
first, but then he's like, I'm gonna go check the perimeter.
And conveniently goes so that they can have a big smooch, which is honestly they talk about this and it makes a little more sense now that I hear this, but apparently it was incredibly like wind was going and Daryl's hair was or it was like just Norman Reedus's hair was just like totally getting in front of his face. There was a lot of mosquitoes. It was incredibly awkward. The kiss felt super awkward to me, but maybe that's
Really?
yeah, it did not feel natural at all.
I wasn't looking for authentic kissy
Uh,
face. I was just really cheering for Daryl being able to finally make out with somebody
Yeah,
because
he needed to make out with somebody.
it's
He's been
been so
on
long. Like even with Leah, did he have like makeout scenes with her?
I think they had sex. I don't know, but they we don't ever see a ton of that. And then
Yeah.
Connie obviously was dead, then alive, and then they kind of just
They
friend
were,
zone.
yeah, they're done. They're in the friend zone for sure.
but yeah, I'm glad his drought is over and that he's getting a little bit of love and TLC. That's good. But yeah, so while they're waiting for the water to go down, they're making out. And Falu's just kind of like, I don't know where he is while all this is
Wandering
happening.
around,
Just like,
watching
I'm
the
gonna give you
burn.
a moment. So they're just kind of lying in wait to confront Losane and the rest of the nest.
But also what's happened right before the smooch was Isabel was like, I will totally, me and
Go.
Laurent will come with you and we'll leave with you after this is over.
And we know that this is not going to end well because it never does for Daryl, but I think we can pretend for the moment that things
Maybe
might work out.
season three will be them as a family unit in France with Auntie Carol along for the ride.
I feel like
And
Auntie Carol and Isabel are going to have some
and
pretty
Uncle
big
Ash.
clashes.
Maybe.
I don't
We'll
know.
see. They could just be building back up to like a mega cast of epic proportions with all
Maybe,
these
but
people. I mean,
oh,
the problem is here, I like Isabel, I like Laurent, I like Ash. I would be pretty gutted if any of them get killed. That would
I
suck.
know, which is why they probably are going to kill them all. Or I think it's just going to be just Daryl and Carol they're standing unless they pull a really crazy trickaroo and they make it Carol die.
I mean,
Sacrifice.
Falou is also a total badass, but he's almost certainly gonna die.
Oh yeah, yeah. So anyway, um, so we shall see what happens, but they're currently waiting for the big confrontation. In the meantime, I'm glad Daryl's getting some affection. He's been in that wasteland for so long, and it feels like
I
he
mean,
deserves a little bit of like human contact that's not just like, hanging out. So,
for
um,
Daryl, this is actually like a fairly lucrative or fertile time for him because Leah wasn't all that long ago. He had, that like all of his relationships seem to have happened since season 11 or 10 or whatever. But however, we're still not done with this episode because there's another whole fairly lengthy segment when Carol wakes up and they're over Paris. I will resist the temptation to go into another rant. What I will say that's cool about this is they do appear to land at the there's a hippodrome
a
on the
lot of
west
fun.
side of Paris. Oh no,
I
not at La Défense, but it's close to La Défense, which
yeah,
is this hippodrome, this racetrack. It's a real thing. If you look at it, you can see it on Google Maps. It's kind of close to La Défense, but what breaks my immersions there is, although that would be a cool place to land, she would have to walk away from downtown Paris to get to La Défense to then turn around and walk toward
yeah.
the Champs-Élysées.
Yeah,
So
it's not they're doing a little bit of a
yeah,
like edit, but the fact that they go there in that area, I have stayed there before just because there was a when I visited Paris pre-pandemic, for whatever reason hotels were insane and so we ended up staying there for part of it
that's pretty
because
far out.
it's far out. But it was actually pretty cool out there. And it's a weird, very cool architecture and things
Oh
like
yeah.
that. It was really awesome to watch her walk around there. I thought that
This
that
was
was,
a super cool sequence. I don't know what it cost them, but to render Paris looking like 15 years in a world without humans, I thought it was really good. They did great work here.
yeah, I agree. And just seeing a different part of Paris, I thought was fun. And then
Yeah.
watching her see the ruined Eiffel Tower, seeing the Arc de Triomphe, seeing all that it was just it was such a great like scene. And then having her walk into Paris, and just sort of being like, now I'm going to do this. I will say the one weird little fly in the ointment, I do not believe Ash would ever have let her go alone. I think her weird thing saying that she wants him to stay and do all this and that she needs him to stay, it feels like a weird, weak argument. He seems
Yeah.
to know something is up, but he listens to her anyway. That felt a little weak to me, but it is what it is. And I guess,
They did another one of those things where he's like, I want to come with you and help you find your daughter. And she pauses for a half a second and you're like, oh, she's gonna tell him. Now's it, she's gonna tell him. But then she's like, nope, I just need you to stay here. We're gonna
yeah,
need fuel, so go get some fuel. Like it's not like she's giving him an easy job. She's basically told
no,
him, go and find several hundred gallons of ethanol.
yeah.
And I'll be back in 2 weeks. What a terrible
Yeah,
situation for Ash.
right. And it feels like he's something, I don't know. Like anyway, he reluctantly stays behind and it allows her to be off on her own and doing her own Carol thing. I don't think it's surprising that she runs into some kind of Jeanette led something because they're taking over all of Paris, but they're ruling Paris now. We know that. But seeing her discover what is happening is pretty cool, and watching how things are unfolding is, I think, I don't know. It's not shocking, and it's also it's also great to watch Carol doing her own weird little things here. She doesn't really speak French, that is one funny thing is that Ash does. And so
Yeah.
she's like, "Nah, I'm fine without you," but she actually doesn't understand a lot of what's going on because she doesn't speak French. But they conveniently make one of the French people that she gets sort of thrown into like the back of a van with, or back of a truck with, he was an English teacher or something.
That was
But
a great little he like bumps into her and he goes, "Oh, je m'excuse, pardon." She's like, "Don't worry about it," or
yeah, I
something.
know. It's something like obviously that she like is actually speaks English, and he's like, "Oh, you're American." And so she gets into the thick of things pretty quickly. I think she knows, like, when the guy's like, "Oh, why wouldn't they let me travel with my husband?" And she knows something's up because she knows something is really not right here.
There's a
Um,
lot that's very questionable about all of this. They're offering all this food to people, but then they want 20 volunteers and they get some of them go in one truck, some of them go in another. And it's yeah,
yeah.
it's there's something
And
very
it's
strange going
very,
on.
and it's very, like, I think it's very, to me, very clear that this is very much, they're picking the people that are weak and that can't survive and putting them in one truck, and other people, because they are very clear about the fact, oh, she's got life in her, she's a survivor. And so they put her in another truck. And so it feels very much like the calculus or the things that was happening during like concentration camps where they were separating the sick and the elderly. Um,
Maybe.
and that I think is what sets off her alarm bells. But they go into the heart of the world of Jeanette, and um, we see a little bit more of what Jeanette's up to, and they're torturing.
Good old Codron.
Yep. And
This
horribly.
doesn't make a ton of sense. Sorry. And
Yeah.
what? Oh, and
Sorry.
horribly? Yeah, they're
Yeah.
horribly torturing him for sure.
Yeah. Like
But
it's
why
bad.
why is Codron being such a good friend to Daryl? I don't know. Maybe that's not what he interprets what he's doing. He kind of had a real 180 at the end of last season where he was trying to kill Daryl for the whole season, and find Laurent for Genet. But then in this scene and every other scene since the end of last season, when he was like, "Oh, you don't know how to get to Mont Saint Michel? Let me tell you how to get there. It's just take three rights and a left." He suddenly changed teams. The reason for
Well,
that wasn't super clear, other than I think he doesn't want to kill a kid.
I
But
think
now he's like withstanding torture for some reason. I don't get it.
so. I think he had some idea that this was going to be the new civilization. It's clearly not. And so once she sent him to actually kill a kid, he was already turning. And I think he just does not. And seeing the fact that, you know, um, even despite all that, Daryl could have killed him a bunch of times, didn't. And then
Not
seeing
for
how,
lack of trying. Daryl shot him a
no,
few
but
times.
it's true, but they both were kind of doing that to each other. Seeing how Daryl handled himself in the pit with the crazy, like, altered zombies, and I think he sees that and doesn't want that to be what's happening. I think it's not necessarily about protecting Daryl and Laurent, although maybe a little bit more Laurent, but I think he just doesn't buy into what she's doing and is being very stubborn. It's like, I'm not gonna like play into this. That said, the torture that he's undergoing, I just don't know that he would be able to withhold. This is pretty rough. I mean, she's putting like this is the one bit of like we haven't seen all the things she's done to him. It's pretty clear he's being tortured for forever, but like she puts like a corkscrew into him, and like this is like the minor piece of whatever we're seeing. And her lieutenant basically is like, he doesn't know anything because he's withstood all that. And she's like, no, that's not true. And she just keeps doing it because I think she just likes to torture people. But
And
um
she likes to tell analogies about corks and how you have to tease them out.
she likes monologuing quite a bit. That's true. And so I think that they are building her up as the baddie to make it more satisfying when Carol takes her down, because that's where we're going here.
Well, we'll see. I feel like they're setting us up to think that Carol is going to fall into Genet's camp as an ally of Genet potentially. We'll see. Obviously, that's the episode that's coming out this week. We can assume. One other slight detail, when Ash and Carol parted ways, Carol took Hannah's sniper rifle, which was a super badass looking rifle. She's had to hand it over to the pouvoir, and I don't know if she'll ever get it back, but she left Daryl's crossbow with Ash, which bodes well in a way because the
Mm,
crossbow has plot armor and will eventually come back to Daryl,
yes, it will. Because
which maybe means that Ash can stand a chance to live in Paris for these 2 weeks
at
or however
least
long.
for a little while. At
Yeah.
least for a little while.
Yeah. So that's like giving him the crossbow gives Ash plot armor too. And so I can breathe a little easier until he
Ugh,
shoots himself with it or something. I don't
I
know. We'll
know
see.
something's gonna happen. Anyway, but looking forward, this is like a long podcast today because we
Yeah, well,
had
it
a
was a
lot of
long
news.
episode and we had 100 pieces of news. The next
But
episode is also a long one. But I look forward to going through that one with you too, HA.
yeah, there's some.
Any other parting thoughts on the episode for you?
No, I think this was overall pretty enjoyable, except for a couple of plot holes. But this was probably my like I liked this a lot more than the first episode. So hopefully that will continue and my concern will be put to bed. But I have a feeling there's gonna be things I don't like about the next one, but that's just me.
Yeah.
Um, Still excited, building up the tension for when Daryl and Carol are going to be reunited. What is your bet about when they actually do that?
I mean, it could be episode 4 as far
I,
as
I think it's got to be, it can't be just at the end, right?
she's made
I hope
so
they do.
much progress already. The fact that
Yeah.
in episode 2, she's in France, not just in France, but well, she's within like 100 or 200 miles of where Daryl is because he's not in Paris, but she's basically in the same place that Daryl was at the end of last season, like the
I am
exact
betting
same place.
I'm betting it's either at the very end of this episode or in, I think, episode 4. I'm agreeing with you on that front.
Okay,
I think if they play it out longer than that, then it gets a little like I think we got to reunite them to have the drama start up, the conflicts between Daryl and his new family unit and Carol and her ways. So we got to have some time to play that out.
for sure. Well, maybe they will make an airplane ride to Spain at the end of the season that'll stop in enough places to satisfy my desire for aviation fidelity. But I think this episode was also really cool. Like even despite the airplanes, the debacle, I'll call it, um, because of all the cool, like the stop in Greenland was awesome. I just wish they did more of that. That's all. And I think Daryl getting a smooch is worthy of celebration. And finding out more about what Losang is up to also was exciting. So yeah, I'm totally enjoying this season so far, and I can't wait to keep talking about it with you next time. If anybody listening wants to let us know what you thought about it, you can leave a message on Spotify is where you can leave comments. You can also email us at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. You can find the rest of our episodes online at reanimated.podbean.com, and continue to check in as we talk about this show and more. So thank you for listening and adios.
Bye. Ciao.